European people. So thank you En Marche for hosting us, and a very good conversation to you guys.
Yes. Let's start with Robert.
Français, alors je vais parler anglais. First of all, thank you for bringing me here. It's really an adventure for me to be here and to talk about the future of Europe in the context also of Central and Eastern Europe. We were always feeling the solidarity of Western states. And again, I probably feel like Jarosław 40 years ago, traveling to France probably and abroad and having these discussions. They probably, it's only my imagination, they probably were looking very similar. That people were afraid what's going on in these communist countries and how we can help. So I come from a country of solidarity, and I saw this solidarity today, and this is a wonderful thing. And I think if we need something, we need solidarity. We need solidarity on every possible level, and it's not only remembering this solidarity written by big S, so that we are proud of that it was a very strong, famous movement of 10 million people who changed the Polish and regional reality, but we need everyday solidarity of people in Europe today. The solidarity, I think, might be also a key for the further discussion of what society we want to build. I have a feeling that we've forgotten about some fundamental values. We were thinking that I somehow connected to our continent, and we will always take care of it, we will always preserve it, and suddenly we are losing it, or we already lost the fundamentals of it. And we've forgotten that those values with democracy on the top, they are like beautiful flowers. If you don't flower them, if you don't water them, you don't take care of them regularly, they just simply die. And I come from a country where after 1989, thanks to people like Jarosław and Adam Michnik and others involved in solidarity movement, we thought we can forever live in free country, and this is not the case now. We see, and especially people like him and like my mother who was in solidarity movement, that they're losing something, that there is something they were fighting for a long time and we're losing. And it's my generation probably and next generations which do not have this feeling from some reasons that they're losing something, because this freedom, this democracy, those values were given for granted. They were always there. They were like fresh air. We were always breathing that. So we still probably don't see that it happens. But I come here also as a mayor, and I see there is a hope for that. I see that people are missing some kind of community solidarity, of some values which populists will never give. Because populists play this tricky game which Machiavelli described a few centuries ago of divisions. Divided society is much easier to manage, to handle with, to dispute, and united society. And we, people who are on the other side of this debate, we should do everything that the society won't be divided. I also, as a mayor, I see that politicians whom we trusted for in the past, they lost its trust because they losing their power. We see more and more that, not especially on national or more global level, politicians have less and less power. What people like, and especially I see it in Poland, those are local politicians. Why? I think that they see that local is very concrete. That when you promise a new school, if you promise some changes in your town, little community. Those changes are much easier to do, but also they see, people can touch it, people can go to this new school. Benjamin Barber, who was a famous professor, who passed away unfortunately more than a year ago, I think, he was saying that mayors will rule the world. Why? Because it's more and more that mayors solving global problems. Who deals in France, in Germany, in Hungary, mostly with refugee crisis? Who deals with climate changes? Who deals with austerity, with lack of housing? Those are less and less national level politicians. There are more and more local politicians who are forced to deal it because no one else cares. So, and I also see, it's another factor interesting for me, that you cannot govern the city letting people be left alone, behind. You must feel about the city because of many reasons, of your community, thinking that no one is left behind. Hillary Clinton had this wonderful slogan when she was running for President of the United States, that she would like to create United States where no one is left behind. I think what we should think now is to create local communities, a nation in Europe where no one is left behind. This means we should go local, thinking globally, but acting locally. This means that we politicians have a special mission to come back to the roots, talk to people. It's not easy, but if we want to get rid of populism, we need to do it. And I see how it works. I see the real effects of it. I see how mayors became popular in our country, and mayors are the best ambassadors of European Union. In Poland, the mayors are really the lobbyists for European Union. Why? Not only because of financial situation, but it's also because of the values we see are important for development of our cities, because we cannot afford that anyone is left behind. So this is also my European agenda. When you want to punish a country for some attacks on rule of law, some changes in democracy, do not punish average citizen. Punish bad politicians. Spread the money, not like traditionally we used to do through national governments, but try to spread the money more by local, regional authorities, NGOs, companies. This will punish the national politicians, the ones who are bad, and not the citizens who still believe in European project. So this is my appeal, that we should do everything that will not lose the grassroots. If we lose, we're losing that. But if we lose average citizen and its hope and its trust in European Union, we'll lose everything.
Your perspective as a journalist and an editor-in-chief of a free media in Poland.
Est-ce que je peux parler l'anglais avec un accent français?
Le français, on sera très honoré.
Oui, nous sommes en France, je suppose. Bon, merci de votre invitation. Et voilà, je crois que nous sommes dans le moment vraiment décisif, parce que le moment d'effondrement de deux pays démocratiques qui sont vraiment importants dans cette partie de l'Europe, c'est-à-dire la démocratie en Pologne et la démocratie en Hongrie, ça fait en danger de l'unité de l'Union européenne et ça peut provoquer une sorte d'implosion de l'Union européenne. Mais je vais commencer par me présenter parce que je représente un journal, une Gazeta Wyborcza qui a été créée en 1989 pour parler des tables rondes. Après la révolution des velours, on n'a pas versé une goutte de sang. Et cette pour parler a donné des buts des grandes transformations en Europe. C'est après, était l'effondrement des Iron Curtain, le mur de Berlin. Je mentionne cette pourparlers parce que aujourd'hui, ils sont visés, ils sont attaqués comme une sorte de trahison de la peuple polonais. Ce sont les élites rouges qui font les complots avec les élites des anciens communistes. Et voilà, la société, les ouvriers, la classe ouvrière étaient vendus. Bien sûr, je cite cette propos-là parce que c'est une façon de présenter de l'histoire aujourd'hui par les partis gouvernementaux. Toutes les réussites des dernières 25 années, grandes transformations, accès à l'Union européenne, au OTAN, grands changements de civilisation sont mis en cause parce que ce n'était pas les populistes qui ont fait. Et dans ce grand mensonge, ce gouvernement de la loi et la justice a fait grand score. Ils ont réussi 36% de voix. C'est pas beaucoup. Comme on prit en considération qu'on fait la somme entre les voix de Mélenchon et Le Pen, ça fait plus ou moins 36. Vous avez eu la chance parce qu'il y a En Marche, il y a Macron. J'espère qu'à côté de moi, il y a un Macron pour la Pologne. Mais malheureusement, nous n'avons pas assez de chance parce que la gauche a perdu. C'est-à-dire qu'ils n'ont pas atteint suffisamment score, 8% pour la coalition de seuil. Ils ont perdu et ils ont fait la place, parce que la politique n'accepte pas de vacuum, pour les populistes. Quelle est la recette de la loi et la justice? La recette pour la victoire. Bien sûr, mensonge historique, la propagande, des fake news, ils sont très malins ce qui concerne Twitter, Facebook, etc. Mais ce mensonge est construit dans les deux piliers. Un pilier, c'est un pilier social, et la deuxième, c'est national. Ce que Max Weber a dit, c'est là, ils ont rendu la dignité. Dignité sociale, c'est-à-dire à chaque 12e enfant, ils ont distribué 500 zloty. Ils ont fait marche en arrière ce qui concerne la réforme de la retraite. Ils ont distribué des médicaments gratuits pour les retraités, etc. Beaucoup de Polonais sont très reconnaissants. Et la deuxième pilier, c'est la dignité nationale. Il faut se enlever des genoux. Ce n'est pas un hasard que ce slogan était emprunté de Vladimir Poutine. Il dit la même chose. On s'est enlevé les genoux. Nous, les Polonais, nous sommes une nation digne. Ce n'est pas les Bruxelles qui nous imposent des quotas des émigrés qui peuvent nous contaminer de parasites ou de maladies diverses. Ce n'est pas la Bruxelles qui va gouverner la Pologne. Nous, les Polonais, on était toujours une victime éternelle de la trahison, l'Angleterre, la France qui nous a aidés en 1939. Ce sont les Allemands qui nous ont envahi, les Russes, etc. On était victimes des complots juifs internationaux. Vous voyez, c'est une façon de présenter de l'histoire. Qu'est-ce que c'est la politique historique? La politique historique, c'est la politique, mais ne concerne pas la future, mais le passé. Hein? C'est simple. Alors, après qu'ils ont gagné des élections, qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait? Les tavariches Lénine, il disait toujours, c'est la propagande qui est le plus important. Ils ont mis en main à la média publique, ils ont transformé à la tube de la propagande gouvernementale. c'est honteux qu'est-ce qui se passe. C'est honteux. C'est Russian television, c'est un gâteau. Hein. Je dis ça avec un peine, parce que ça représente peut-être, à la façon symbolique, comment profond il y a un clivage dans la société polonaise, parce qu'il passe par la famille. Il faut que vous sachiez que mon propre frère, c'est un chef de la télévision publique, voire nationale, qui est en contact avec son président Kaczynski et fait les programmes d'information chaque jour. Et son frère, c'est-à-dire c'est moi, qui dirige le plus grand journal quotidien d'opposition libérale, etc. Progressiste, hein? On dit chez vous progressiste.
Vous savez que vous avez eu un article dans Le Monde, vous et votre frère, justement, il y a quelques mois là-dessus.
Oui, c'est vrai, c'est vrai. Mais il n'y a pas raison d'être fier, oui, c'est assez douloureux, mais c'est comme ça. J'ai dit sur la question des clivages parce que la France, en France, c'est pareil. Hein. Il y a un clivage depuis de la Révolution française, hein, puis il passe par le temps de Communard, des affaires Dreyfus, de 68, avant De Gaulle, et avant Vichy. Hein. C'était toujours comme ça. Mais je crains malheureusement que les blessures sont tellement profondes qu'il n'y a pas aucune chance qu'ils se cicatrisent pour les perspectives qu'on peut considérer comme importantes. Bon, enfin bref, je crois que les choses les plus importantes aujourd'hui, c'est de défendre l'Europe. C'est défendre l'Europe parce que c'est l'Europe, c'est un seul antidotum, un seul médicament, un vaccin, je ne sais pas, pour les national-populistes, qui n'est pas la spécificité polono-hongroise. C'est une spécificité européenne, voire mondiale même. Ça passe à Suédois, ça passe à Hollande, aux Pays-Bas, excusez-moi, aux Pays-Bas, 5 étoiles et la Ligue du Nord, c'est plus ou moins la même chose que Mélenchon et Le Pen. Alors, c'est pas vrai? Alors, je crois que nous sommes tous concernés. Il faut trouver la solution au niveau européen. Et quand l'Europe introduit les procédures de l'article 7 contre la Pologne, les Hongrois, ce ne sont pas visés les nations, les sociétés. Hein. Ce sont visés des gouvernements qui violent des règles. Ils ont volontairement signé les traités de Lisbonne, étaient signés par les Kaczynski, frères jumeaux de Jarosław Kaczynski. Bon, je crois qu'on va développer des sujets parce qu'il y a beaucoup de choses à toucher. Je ne vais pas monopoliser le discours. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Et on discutera effectivement de comment faire cette distinction entre sanctionner le gouvernement sans que les peuples se sentent eux-mêmes humiliés. Je pense que ce sera aussi un des gros défis pour les Européens. Marton, la parole est à vous.
Un grand merci de votre invitation. Je pense que je vais continuer donc, avec les paroles de tous les deux invités parce que tu as mentionné l'espoir qui est très important pour notre avenir. Alors ça, tu as mentionné donc, la division vraiment profonde de nos deux sociétés. Je pense que ce sont les deux choses vraiment importantes pour notre discussion ce soir. Mais en fait, I continue in English so that we can have the avec un accent français. So that we can have the discussion in English, and then if you have any questions, I'm very happy to respond in French. One of the things that Astrid asked us to think about is to describe to you what it's like to live in a liberal state. So I try to think of it in French terms. To give you a taste of what it's like, at least from a Hungarian perspective, so it could be quite different from Poland. So just imagine that France 2, France 3, France 4 are basically controlled by a government of Marine Le Pen. Imagine that all the public broadcasting news, the evening news, the subjects covered are basically controlled by party bureaucrats coming from Rassemblement National. And this is what people see. Imagine that the only private station that you have is Canal+, and this is the only place where you can go to have a balanced coverage of political news. And imagine that your electoral wards, the circonscription, suddenly the boundaries are redrawn by some obscure parliamentary body, and that has a major impact on your new political movement called En Marche, just before you go into the presidential and legislative elections of 2017. Then imagine that your government suddenly restricts your ability to strike. This is basically what it is like to live in a liberal state. So all of a sudden the space in which you exist, the political space, is severely restricted by the government, and you really have to figure out what you do as a private citizen to respond to these challenges. So I try to think of it, I speak from the perspective of someone who, with my colleagues who are sitting here, who have actually tried to do something about it. So we set up a new political party called Momentum. It's basically, it's a whole new generation of budding politicians who basically thought that we don't have any representation in Hungary. We can't go to the left because they're all discredited. We can't go to the right because they've gone too far to the far right. And they don't believe in the sorts of things that we believe in. So we thought we'll take our future into our own hands and set up a political party. So we started organizing these things at the local level. We set up a thing called Circles of Action, which basically responds to the sorts of things that Robert just described, local things, like refurbishing a playground or collecting the rubbish from the streets. We actually did that in Brussels 2 weeks ago. People came up to us saying, "What are you doing? You know, you've got people to do that for you." But we sort of do those things in villages and towns around Hungary. And we try to respond to the sorts of local issues that people submit to us as issues of substance. And I fully agree with Robert that politics is really local. I mean, we can talk about all these grand issues like the Sargentini report. At the end of the day, even the European elections will be decided about who cleans the streets or who fixed the playground, because that's the person they know as the reliable politician who did something for the community. So that's the first thing you can do. You can organize at the local level, and we've been trying to do that in Hungary. The second thing, which I think probably has some resonance in Poland as well, is that you can leave the country. So we've had 800,000 Hungarians who are basically living in places like Paris, London, Berlin. Basically the most highly educated Hungarians have left the country. Of course, they feel really bad about this. They go and vote. And what we try to do is mobilize these people for the elections in 2018. So given that we live in the 21st century, we developed an app, an iPhone app, a smartphone app that basically allows people to do car sharing, to go to the consulate together. And you know, you'd be surprised, but this has a big impact on the turnout. So in London, for example, issues like that made us the third most popular party out of all Hungarian parties. It doesn't sound very good because the far right came first. So Jobbik came first. The Greens came second with 20.4%, and we came third with like 20.3%. Now Fidesz got 9%. So we're obviously very popular in all over Europe, but of course you need to win these elections in Hungary. And just to be very transparent with you, we got 3% in the elections, and you need to clear the 5% threshold to get into parliament. So we're not quite there yet, but I think we have the foundations sorted out. And the third thing, which I think is very difficult to predict in a liberal state, is how people respond to events. So they're very passive, they're very apathetic, they're very cynical, and all of a sudden 100,000 people arrive and go on the streets for an event that nobody expected. So I'll just give you one example. The Fidesz government in Hungary, because I mean that's not the sort of thing you do when it compelled the government to withdraw its proposal. Or I'll give you another example. This is how Momentum came to being. A bunch of young people mainly from Budapest, but from other parts of Hungary, thought that the government's plan to organize the Olympic Games in Budapest in 2024, which will go to Paris, and I'll explain the story to you from a Hungarian perspective, was not a good idea because this government has spent billions and billions of forints on stadiums that nobody used. So we had a major concern about the corruption risk of this project. So what do? One of our friends actually submitted a proposal to organize a local referendum in Budapest, and it went through. So all of a sudden we had a month to collect 138,000 signatures. We had never done politics before, so we thought, let's do it. So we set up these stores across Budapest, and people started flocking to our stores, and they signed it. Within a month, we collected 260,000 signatures, and nobody expected that. So this just, this was how Momentum just exploded onto the political scene. And again, what happens? The government knew fine well that this was something that might be rejected in a popular local referendum. So instead of allowing the referendum to go ahead, they withdrew their bid to organize the Olympics in Budapest, and they let it go to Paris. And they called us all kinds of names. They called us traitors. They called us stooges of Paris. They even said that our party chairman is in his late 20s, and he had a French girlfriend at the time. They even suggested that we did this because he had a French girlfriend. So I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but when the propaganda controlled by the government reaches just about everyone in the country, these things can gain momentum. And this is how little lies become large, massive lies. And people believe that stuff. So, I mean, we can talk about the structural reasons, but this is essentially what it's like to do politics in an illiberal state. I also want to end on a positive note, because I think there is hope. I think the feedback we've been getting from people is really positive. We are the only party that managed to mobilize people who had never ever been active in politics before. We have the youngest voters by far out of all political parties. And of course, we're very conscious of that. So we're very active on Facebook, on Twitter, active on Instagram. We use the sorts of instruments that we have to use because we can't really get into the traditional media. But also because these are the mechanisms, these are the channels that our voters use anyway. So I think there are creative ways in which you can do politics even in an illiberal regime, but I'm sure that's something we'll discuss in the discussion later. Thanks very much.
Alors, we'll take some questions en français or in English. Please introduce yourself first, so that our guests know who you are and the audience as well. And then, yes, two questions over there. Le monsieur au fond, et puis ensuite trois. Ouais. Monsieur. Ouais,
Oui, bonjour, François. Nicolas, merci beaucoup pour vos interventions que j'ai trouvées super intéressantes. L'Europe centrale m'intéresse beaucoup. J'ai passé les 20 dernières années à l'OCDE à travailler sur un programme qui s'appelle Sigma, qui aidait à construire, consolider les institutions publiques. Et ces institutions, justement, c'est le mot, c'est le concept, c'est la notion que je n'ai pas entendu dans votre discours. Il me semble, mais je me trompe peut-être, qu'une des raisons pour lesquelles des pays comme la Hongrie ou la Pologne, qui étaient perçus par l'Union européenne il y a 20 ans comme étant plus en avance que la moyenne, sont aujourd'hui les pays dans lesquels la démocratie est la plus faible. C'est un peu paradoxal. Et en réalité, ce dont on s'aperçoit, si on fait une analyse rétrospective, c'est que parce que ces pays étaient en avance, on a peut-être moins investi chez vous à consolider ces institutions. C'est-à-dire, quand je dis institutions, c'est-à-dire ce sont les institutions de l'État, c'est le gouvernement, ce sont surtout les contre-pouvoirs institutionnels. Le Conseil d'État, Cour des comptes, enfin, tout ce qui contrôle en fait l'organisation et le fonctionnement du travail exécutif. Donc voilà, ma question c'est celle-là, c'est est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose, une leçon que l'on peut tirer pour les pays des Balkans, les futurs membres de l'Union européenne, pour que justement ce qui vous arrive ne puisse pas arriver à l'Albanie, à la Bosnie, à la Serbie, etc. etc. Merci.
On va prendre également une autre question.
Bonsoir, hello. I would like to just pose the question in English. I'm calling Elias Kivelos, and I'm in March, in the 10th arrondissement, the 10th Circuit of Paris. I come from Greece, actually, which has been for a long time ago, and during many years, an illiberal state. I have actually listened to you with lots of attention. My question actually concerns the culture, and what we call culture, I do not only to specify on the artistic or the university or other this kind of expression, but the whole imaginary. And I would like to ask you if you haven't felt in Hungary or in Poland that a liberal culture has never been stated, has never been empowered, has never been developed. That in that case, we have all this accident, we have this failure of a liberal culture that has never been developed. And so, do you find that the culture, through all this huge propaganda in Hungary, in Poland, and even elsewhere, I can even give Greek examples of the actual government who has used many of your of your experiences actually that you have evoked in Hungary and Poland, but because Syriza is a kind of this movement, I would like to tell you if actually they use something of the communist culture that they have left behind, they have supposed to leave behind. If there is something, not of the communist as a Marxist thing, but as a totalitarian thing, that has been actually refound and has been reused in order to control people in a way or another, in a way that they could hurt or they could be controlled. Is there a cultural problem in Hungary or in Czech Republic or even in Poland? So in the same way I could say the same thing about Greece or even Italy. Is there something in the cultural level that influences this kind and eases this kind of propaganda?
Yes. So institutions and culture, who wants to?
Okay. Let me start with the second one because I think it's actually they're both really good questions. So let's start with the culture of liberalism. I think our two countries are really similar in the sense that, in fact, I'm going to answer both questions with this because I think they're interrelated. I mean, if you think about it, both Poland and Hungary were the most advanced in the 1980s because they had, if you like, a vibrant civil society. The democratic opposition was basically a pretty strong civil society. I mean, as you said, Solidarność had 10,000 members.
10 million.
10, yeah, but I mean, sorry, 10 million. Yeah, indeed.
The first solidarity.
Yeah, the real, sorry, the real, the one in the 1980s and from 1979.
So whole Hungarian nation was.
I know. But I think I've seen when I was when I did my studies, I think the Hungarian democratic opposition was about 150,000 strong. But that was the entire group. So we're talking about a country of 10 million, and these people deeply believed in liberal ideas. They were, and they are. They continue to be liberal. So there's definitely a very long culture of liberalism, and if you want to go a little bit further back, I mean, the Austro-Hungarian Empire had a really cosmopolitan culture, and this takes me on to my second point, which I'm sure resonates in Poland as well, the division between large cities and the countryside. So in terms of cultural differences, we call it the urban-rural divide. And yes, there is a real divide in terms of values, where you have, I'm sure it applies to France as well to a certain extent, you know, cosmopolitan Parisians and you know, other parts of the country, but it's very profound in Hungary, and that means that people stand for different values. So I think what's really interesting is that it's almost like it's a pendulum where, you know, we have swung to the extreme on the populist side after long periods of a very open cosmopolitan culture, which was probably more dominated by the urban elites. I'll stop here. I was going to respond to the other one in French, but then I'll probably stop here.
Parce que Robert m'a demandé de trouver la réponse pour la première question. Excusez-moi, vous êtes peut-être déçu, c'est moi, c'est pas lui. De toute façon, c'est une question qui est difficile pour nous aussi, tous les démocrates en Pologne. Comment c'est possible que les pays qui rêvaient d'avoir la liberté, la démocratie, après 25 années, à la façon si facile, se déprive lui-même de la liberté et de la démocratie. Et bien sûr, toutes les élites intellectuelles disent, dans les voies d'auto-accusation, c'est notre faute parce que l'on n'a pas assez éduqué les gens, on n'a pas assez faire les efforts pour les gens voilà, étaient investis dans le domaine public, l'autoconscience, les phénomènes démocratiques, etc. Maintenant, tout le monde a pris de la façon extraordinaire. Tous les manifestants ont toujours la Constitution. Tout le monde est au courant de ce que ça veut dire le tribunal constitutionnel et de quoi ça s'agit. Hein. Mais je crois que cette marche en arrière, ce qui concerne la démocratie, c'est la conséquence de leur héritage communiste. Et comme vous voyez, le même pays, l'Allemagne, hein, qui est divisée par la fleuve Loire. Il y a l'Allemagne de l'Est et l'Allemagne de l'Ouest. Il y a Chemnitz. Chemnitz, il y avait de grandes manifestations, assassinats, l'histoire, extrême droite, etc. On voit le désespoir, combien des Allemands qui habitaient en Russie et qui sont émigrés en Allemagne Est sont frustrés aujourd'hui. Ils regardent toujours la télévision russe. Quel est brak zaufania, manque de confiance pour les institutions d'État, pour la presse, etc. Vous voyez, ce sont tous les mécanismes qui concernent aussi les Allemands. Et ce qui est preuve que c'est dans leur héritage communiste, tout simplement. Mais c'est aussi cette crise de la démocratie. Quand j'ai essayé de vous convaincre dans la première partie de mon exposition, ça concerne toutes les nations. Ce n'est pas que la spécificité post-communiste. Bien sûr, les activistes intellectuels, les gens de la politique, les hommes de la politique polonais étaient tellement excités des perspectives à l'Union européenne qu'il était très convaincant. Bronisław Geremek a essayé de convaincre avec le succès les élites de Bruxelles que la Pologne, toute la Pologne, c'est comme Gazeta Wyborcza, et toute l'église catholique polonaise, c'est comme Tygodnik Powszechny, c'est un hebdomadaire ouvert. Il a tellement voulu que ce soit la vérité qu'il a cru. Et il était convaincant. Et aujourd'hui, déception. Hein. Comment c'est possible? Malheureusement, le rôle de l'Église catholique, malheureusement, est pénible. Hein. Comme vous voyez, le père Rydzyk, qui est purement antisémite, qui est profiteur, qui fait un secte païen. Je ne crois pas. Est-ce qu'il représente l'Église catholique? Je n'ose pas imaginer la confrontation entre Pape François et Père Rydzyk. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Vous voyez, le rôle de l'Église catholique est vraiment sévère à juger. Hein. Alors, il y a beaucoup de facteurs, mais il faut que vous sachiez qu'il y a quand même un mouvement très fort en Pologne. Les gens qui sont profondément démocrates, qui depuis 3 ans font des efforts immenses en sortant de la rue, en manifestant, etc. Soyez gentils d'avoir ça dans l'arrière-conscience, je ne sais pas. Les gouvernements PiS ne représentent pas toute la société polonaise. Ça, il faut tenir en considération.
So I answer your question concerning the culture, and I think it very much connects also to other issues like education and so on. Well, I'm not going to defend the politicians from the past, but the situation in which we were in 1989 was that we had to rebuild the country. And at this stage, there was also becoming this neoliberal way of thinking that you need to have profits, that everything what's not bringing profit is useless and you should not invest in that. And many of politicians in Poland believed, and it was probably at this moment an important thing and factor, that the culture is not bringing benefits, profits, it doesn't bring money, the real money. So if people did not have housing, they did not have jobs, they did not have the basic things, they believe in this thing that we do not need culture. So at this time, until now, many institutions, not only cultural but also educational, were closed down. I was a month ago in Smolniki. This is a small village in northeastern part of Poland, a very poor area. And in this Smolniki, there was a school. And this school was closed down by the previous government. It was closed down because there was not enough children to maintain the school. So the way of thinking was that it was not profitable in concerning finances to maintain a school. But those people said, when I met them, they said, our school was not only a school, it was the only meeting point where we could meet and discuss our local democracy, where we could talk about the things that do matter for our village. And what is left for us is the church. This is the only other place where we can meet now. And they say, if the priest allows us, we can meet there. If not, we cannot meet. But at school, we could always meet, and we do not have school. And they are angry at politicians because those politicians also, they put them in the situation where they expect them to fight for democracy, for constitution, to defend constitutional tribunal and highest court. But they were not there when their little school was closed down. And they were protesting, and they say, where were you when we were asking you for important thing for us? Where were you to defend our school? This was our local democracy. And these schools, it's not only Smolniki school. Those are little police stations, those are post offices, which populists very intelligently, they bring back to those places. Law and Justice Party today is bringing back those institutions, and people are happy because they say, yes, this is our democracy. We will never probably have anything in common with Constitutional Tribunal, but we have a lot in common with our little school, with the post office, with police station, with the theater. So for me as a mayor, culture is a part of it. I know it doesn't bring money. I pay a lot for maintaining 11 institutions. I pay cultural institutions. But it brings so many other things. We don't have to talk about that. So, and I see that it brings profits. And I'm thankful to the previous mayors that they did not close down those little theaters and cultural institutions, because today Słupsk on the map of Poland is the only place where you can have progressive theaters, progressive spectacles besides Warsaw. Klątwa, it's a, I don't know how it's in English, klątwa. Jak? Curse. It's a famous spectacle, and it's criticizing pedophilia in Catholic Church, criticizing John Paul II. It was shown in Warsaw with a lot of controversies. And the second place in Poland where it can be shown is Słupsk. It's my city. Why? Because the people in Słupsk, they understand how important it is to have independent culture, how important it is to have culture in its city. And I can be proud today that we have Democrats in the city, that they really understand what democracy is for, that you need free culture.
Thank you so much for this. Just in order to clarify something, the previous government that has closed the school was the liberal one of Donald Tusk.
Unfortunately, yes.
So let's have 3 questions